The mountains always looked different when you had nowhere else to go. Jackson Miller watched the fading sunlight cast long shadows across the winding road ahead, his weathered hands gripping the steering wheel of his old Ford pickup. 8 months on the road had taught him to read landscapes like survival maps, where to find water, shelter, work. But these ancient Appalachian peaks held something else, something that pulled at his memory like a half-forgotten dream. Beside him, 10-year-old Ethan slept under a pile of worn coats, his small face peaceful, despite everything they had lost. The boy had adapted to homelessness with a resilience that sometimes broke Jackson's heart, learning to shower in gas station bathrooms, doing homework by flashlight, never complaining about another dinner of canned beans heated on their camping stove. The letter from the law firm had arrived 3 weeks ago, finding them at the post office box they maintained in Kentucky. Jackson had almost thrown it away, assuming it was another debt collection notice. Instead, it contained an iron key with a wolf's head design and coordinates to a property in the Virginia mountains, an inheritance from Walter Miller, the grandfather Jackson had never met. Ethan stirred as the truck hit a pothole, his eyes blinking open. "I had that dream again, Dad. The one with the fire inside the rocks. They were talking to me." Jackson glanced at his son, a familiar uneasiness settling in his chest. Ethan's dreams had become increasingly specific over the past week, always about stone, fire, and whispers from the mountain. "Just your imagination working overtime, bud. Go back to sleep. We've still got a few hours." But Jackson couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Walter Miller had been a family ghost story, a cautionary tale about obsession. Jackson's father had rarely spoken of his own father, only saying that Walter had abandoned the family for some crackpot energy research in the mountains. The few times Jackson had pressed for details, his father's face had darkened. "Some doors are better left closed, son." The old man was brilliant, but lost his mind, chasing fairy tales about energy from rocks. Now Walter was dead, and somehow he'd tracked down his estranged grandson. The lawyer's letter had been brief. In accordance with the last will and testament of Walter Miller, his property and all contents are bequeathed to his grandson, Jackson Miller, and his descendants. No explanation, no additional information, just coordinates, the key, and the deed to a property Jackson hadn't known existed. The gas gauge hovered just above empty as they crossed into Virginia. Jackson had spent their last $40 filling the tank in Tennessee, a calculated risk that this inheritance might be their salvation. After his construction company collapsed during the pandemic, they'd been surviving on odd jobs and dwindling savings. Last month, the bank had finally repossessed their small Memphis home. This mysterious mountain property represented their last hope for stability, for giving Ethan something resembling a normal life. The GPS signal weakened as they climbed higher into the mountains, the roads narrowing and deteriorating. Soon they were on a gravel Forest Service road, the truck's suspension groaning in protest. When the electronic voice announced they were 1 mile from their destination, the screen flickered and went dark. Jackson frowned, tapping the device. "Dead. But we're not even in a tunnel." He pulled over, checking his phone. No signal, and the battery had drained from 80% to 12 in minutes. Even his watch had stopped. Jackson's military training kicked in. Electromagnetic anomaly, possibly from mineral deposits in the mountain. He'd seen similar effects near certain caves in Afghanistan. The road ended abruptly at a fallen tree, forcing them to continue on foot. Jackson grabbed their emergency backpack, water bottles, and the documents from the lawyer. Ethan shouldered his small bag containing his treasured possessions, a tattered teddy bear, a few books, and the rock collection he'd been building during their months on the road. The trail beyond was overgrown but visible, winding deeper into the forest. The October air carried the scent of pine and wet earth, the forest floor a carpet of red and gold leaves. Jackson moved with the quiet precision he'd developed as an Army Ranger, eyes scanning for movement, ears attuned to the sounds of the wilderness. Old habits from dangerous places never quite died. As they hiked, Jackson noticed strange markings on rocks alongside the trail, symbols that looked both ancient and precisely engineered. His construction background recognized some as geological survey markers, but others resembled no classification system he'd ever encountered. Some appeared to be mathematical formulas carved directly into stone. The markings grew more frequent as they continued, often accompanied by veins of unusual minerals in the rock, amber-colored streaks that caught the light oddly, seeming to pulse when viewed from certain angles. Jackson's uneasiness deepened. His engineering courses had covered most geological formations, but these didn't match anything from his training. Ethan, however, was drawn to the symbols, running his fingers over them with unexpected familiarity. This one means flow, and this one is convergence. I think they're directions. Jackson stared at his son. How could you possibly know that? Ethan shrugged, unable to explain. I just do. It's like they make sense when I touch them. A military helicopter thundered overhead, breaking the moment. Jackson instinctively pulled Ethan beneath a tree, old combat reflexes surfacing. The aircraft was unmarked, unusual for these parts, and flying a search pattern. Once it passed, they continued more cautiously. The forest thinned as they climbed higher, opening suddenly to a small plateau. Jackson stopped, breath catching in his throat. Before them stood a structure unlike anything he'd expected. A house built directly into the mountainside, constructed of dark gray stone flecked with the same amber mineral they'd seen on the trail. The walls rose seamlessly from the bedrock, making it impossible to tell where the mountain ended and deliberate construction began. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. Jackson's builder's eye recognized a masterwork that defied conventional techniques. No visible mortar lines, no seams between the massive stone blocks, almost as if the entire structure had been carved from a single piece of the mountain itself. A modern impossibility, even with advanced equipment. The door, heavy and arched, bore the same wolf's head design as the key. Ancient-looking symbols were carved into the lintel and down the sides, some glowing faintly with an amber light that seemed to come from within the stone itself. Ethan moved forward as if in a trance. It's just like in my dreams. Jackson caught his son's shoulder. Hold on, let me check it first. Military caution overrode curiosity as he circled the perimeter. No power lines, no septic system, no visible water supply. Yet the structure showed none of the deterioration expected from a long-abandoned mountain home. No broken windows, no crumbling stone, no evidence of wildlife intrusion. The place looked, somehow, maintained. At the rear of the house, a small stream emerged from the mountainside, forming a natural pool before continuing down the slope. The water had an unusual clarity, with the same amber mineral visible in the stream bed. Nearby, a garden of herbs and root vegetables grew with surprising vigor for the mountain elevation. Somebody's been here recently. Jackson's tactical assessment was automatic, noting the lack of overgrowth around the garden. But something wasn't adding up. The lawyer had confirmed Walter Miller died 3 months ago at age 88. Who would maintain a remote mountain property with no apparent road access? Returning to the front door, Jackson finally inserted the key. It turned with surprising ease, the lock mechanism smooth and silent despite its apparent age. The door swung inward on perfectly balanced hinges, revealing darkness beyond. The air that escaped from inside carried no musty abandonment, but something else. A scent like cedar, rain, and something Jackson couldn't identify. Ethan slipped past him, drawn forward by something Jackson couldn't see or feel. The boy's small hand found a stone projection on the inner wall, and at his touch, a soft amber glow emanated from recessed fixtures around the room, illuminating an interior that defied explanation. The main room was vast, cathedral-like in its proportions, yet intimately designed. Furniture carved from the same stone as the house created natural seating areas around a central hearth of black slate. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with volumes whose spines showed languages Jackson recognized and many he didn't. The floor beneath their feet was polished stone, inlaid with geometric patterns that subtly directed movement through the space. But most remarkable was the warmth. Despite no visible heat source, no electricity, no burning fire, the interior maintained a perfect temperature. The stone itself radiated gentle heat, as if the mountain's core provided natural thermal regulation. Jackson's builder's mind couldn't process what he was seeing. The construction principles violated everything he knew about thermodynamics and material properties. Stone didn't behave this way, houses didn't maintain themselves, and mountains didn't glow from within. "Dad, come look," Ethan called from across the room, pointing to a large desk positioned beneath a circular window that captured the last light of day. The surface was covered with journals, maps, and technical drawings, a lifetime of research preserved as if the occupant had simply stepped away momentarily. Jackson approached cautiously, years of military training making him wary of the inexplicable. The topmost journal lay open to a page filled with handwriting, sharp and precise as a draftsman's. The heading read, Energy Resonance Pathways, Mapping the Subterranean Network. Below were complex equations and diagrams detailing what appeared to be energy flows through geological formations. Jackson's engineering background allowed him to understand fragments, references to geothermal principles and conductive minerals, but much of it extended beyond conventional science into territories that seemed more theoretical than practical. Diagrams showed the mountain they stood in as the center of a vast network of energy pathways, connecting to other peaks through underground veins of specific mineral compositions. Ethan was already exploring further, fearlessly opening doors and exclaiming at each new discovery. Jackson followed more cautiously, military training keeping him alert for any danger. They found a kitchen with a pump system drawing water from what must be an underground spring, a laboratory filled with equipment both familiar and bizarre, and a library containing thousands of books on subjects ranging from geology to theoretical physics to ancient symbolism. Upstairs, 3 bedrooms waited with beds made up as if expecting guests, 1 large master suite and 2 smaller rooms. In what would have been Ethan's room, Jackson found something that stopped him cold. A child's desk with drawing supplies and books suitable for a 10-year-old boy, as if someone had known exactly who would be coming. The master bedroom contained more personal effects. Photos in simple frames showed a younger version of the man Jackson recognized from the few family pictures he'd seen, Walter Miller, alongside colleagues at research sites around the world. In one, Walter stood proudly beside what appeared to be a younger version of Jackson's father, both smiling in front of a university building. A family connection Jackson had never known existed from before the estrangement. On the bedside table, a leather-bound journal waited with a handwritten note affixed to the cover. For Jackson, when you arrive. On the certainty in those words, not if but when, sent a chill through him that had nothing to do with the mountain air. He opened the journal with hesitation, finding the first page dated just 1 month before Walter's death. Jackson, if you're reading this, then at least one part of my life's work has succeeded. The mountain has called you home, as I knew it would. By now you've noticed the unusual properties of this house and the energy that sustains it. What you're experiencing is just the surface of a discovery that could transform humanity's relationship with energy forever, or destroy it if fallen into the wrong hands. This house sits at a confluence point of natural energy pathways that run through the Appalachian Range, channels of power as old as the mountains themselves. I've spent 40 years mapping, measuring, and harnessing this energy. The technology throughout this house, the heat, light, and water systems, all draw from this infinite clean energy source without depleting it. But others have discovered what I've found. They've been watching, waiting for me to decade so they can claim it. The Blackwood family has controlled coal mining in this region for generations. James Blackwood Sr. was once my research partner until he saw the profit potential and tried to exploit the energy in ways that would destabilize the entire system. I stopped him once at great personal cost. Now his son continues his work. Trust no one from town, especially Sheriff Richard Blackwood. The family has deep roots and deeper influence. They don't understand that this energy can't be mined or extracted conventionally. It must be worked with, not taken from. The house will protect you as it has protected me, but you must learn quickly. Follow the symbols. They'll guide you to what I've hidden beneath. Ethan will help. The sensitivity runs in our blood, skipping generations. Your father never had it, but your son does. The mountain speaks to those who can listen. Jackson closed the journal, a cold knot forming in his stomach. Walter hadn't been a crazy old man abandoning his family for delusions. He'd been hiding, protecting something he believed was valuable enough to sacrifice everything for. As night fell, Jackson lit the fireplace with wood stacked beside the hearth, more for comfort than necessity, in the strangely warm house. Ethan had claimed his prepared room without question, arranging his few possessions and immediately falling into the deepest sleep he'd had in months. Jackson remained downstairs, poring over Walter's journals by firelight, trying to separate scientific fact from what seemed like mystical interpretation. The technical drawings showed genuine engineering genius, systems for capturing, storing, and distributing energy through crystalline minerals embedded in stone. Walter had detailed how certain geological formations naturally concentrated Earth's electromagnetic field, creating battery-like effects in specific mineral combinations. His grandfather had essentially built a house that functioned as both power plant and distribution hub, tapping into energy that conventional science barely acknowledged. Jackson's military and engineering background helped him grasp the implications. If Walter's research was legitimate, it represented an energy source that could make fossil fuels obsolete overnight. No wonder the Blackwood family, with their coal empire, would see it as a threat. A sound outside pulled Jackson from his reading, the crack of a branch beneath a careful foot. He extinguished the lamp without hesitation, military training taking over. Moving silently to the window, he spotted movement at the edge of the clearing. Two figures with flashlights swept the perimeter of the property, occasionally consulting what appeared to be scientific instruments. Jackson slipped out the back door, barefoot, to minimize sound. The cool mountain air hit his skin as he circled through the tree line, using the darkness and terrain as cover. Years of ranger training had taught him how to become invisible, how to move without disturbing even a leaf. He positioned himself behind the larger of the two intruders, listening to their conversation. The readings are off the charts tonight. The house must be active again. Someone's staying there. The other man consulted a device that emitted a soft, pulsing glow. That's impossible. The old man's dead. Nobody else knows how to activate the systems. All I know is the energy signature just spiked for the first time in months. Blake wants continuous monitoring until we figure out what's happening. Jackson had heard enough. In one fluid motion, he emerged from cover, disarmed the first man, and used the momentum to take down the second before either could react. Both men lay face down, Jackson's knee firmly in the back of the larger one. "This is private property. You're trespassing." Military precision in his voice, the tone that had commanded respect in combat zones. The men froze, recognizing the voice of someone trained to handle worse situations than this. "We're just doing our job. Mr. Blackwood pays us to monitor the geological activity in the area." Jackson increased pressure slightly. "With scientific equipment at midnight, try again." The smaller man spoke quickly. "Look, we don't want trouble. Blake Blackwood's been obsessed with this place for years. Said his grandfather worked with the old man who lived here on some experimental energy technology. When the old man died, Blake thought he could finally access it. He's been sending us up weekly to check for changes." Jackson removed a tracking device from the man's vest pocket. "And that's just to mark the location. Cell service doesn't work up here, and GPS gets scrambled by whatever's in the mountain." Jackson relieved them of their equipment in the single handgun they carried between them. "You tell Blackwood this property has a new owner now. It's legally mine, with all papers filed at the county. If I catch anyone trespassing again, I won't be as friendly." He released them, watching as they scrambled down the path, leaving their equipment behind. Once they were gone, Jackson examined the devices: professional-grade electromagnetic field detectors, thermal imaging equipment, and several instruments he didn't recognize. The technology was military-grade, far beyond what local coal barons should possess. Returning to the house, Jackson found Ethan standing in the main room, eyes wide but unafraid. There were men outside. I could feel them. The house felt it too. Jackson knelt to his son's level. "How do you know what the house feels?" Ethan placed his palm against the stone wall. "It hums different when strangers are near, louder, faster, like it's nervous. Right now, it's calm again because you made them go away." Jackson studied his son's face, seeing not imagination but genuine perception. Walter's journal had mentioned sensitivity that ran in the bloodline, but he'd dismissed it as the fancy of an isolated old man. Now, watching Ethan communicate with the house in some inexplicable way, he wasn't so certain. "Get some sleep, buddy. We've got a lot to figure out tomorrow." After Ethan returned to bed, Jackson spent hours strategizing, military planning overlaid with civilian needs. They had shelter, apparently self-sustaining. They had legal ownership, according to the lawyer. But they also had adversaries with unknown resources and motivations. Most concerning was Walter's warning about the local sheriff. Law enforcement complications would limit their options for official protection. By dawn, Jackson had formulated a plan. They needed to understand the house and its systems fully. They needed to assess Walter's research for its actual value versus perceived value. And they needed allies. Impossible to defend a position indefinitely with just two people, one being a child. The morning light revealed new details about the property. What Jackson had taken for decorative patterns in the stonework were actually intricate circuits, amber mineral veins running through the granite like conductive pathways. The house wasn't just built from stone, it was a technological interface with the mountain itself. Jackson began a systematic exploration, applying engineering methodology to what seemed like magic. He measured temperatures throughout the house, finding them consistent despite no visible insulation or heat source. He tested the water system, discovering it provided not just cold mountain water, but perfectly heated water on demand. The lighting responded to touch but required no electricity. Everything functioned through the amber mineral Walter had documented extensively, a crystalline compound with extraordinary conductive properties. Ethan proved an unexpected asset, instinctively understanding systems that baffled Jackson's technical mind. While exploring the kitchen, the boy located a hidden panel by simply running his hands along the wall and stopping where it felt right. Inside was a control system for the house's core functions: lighting intensity, water temperature, even ventilation. The interface used the same symbols they'd seen on the trail, which Ethan seemed to read naturally. This one means warmth, and this is light. And this one, I think it's protection. Ethan's small finger hovered over a symbol more complex than the others. Jackson studied it, recognizing elements from Walter's journal: concentric circles with radiating lines, similar to diagrams of electromagnetic fields. Don't touch that one yet. We need to understand what it does first. Their exploration continued through the morning, each room revealing new technological marvels disguised as rustic simplicity. The laboratory contained equipment for analyzing mineral compositions, electromagnetic fields, and energy transfer, much of it custom-built by Walter himself. Jackson recognized military applications in some of the designs, suggesting his grandfather may have had government connections at some point. In the library, Jackson discovered books dating back centuries. Many focused on ancient engineering techniques from civilizations known for inexplicable architectural achievements: the Egyptians, Incas, and cultures he'd never heard of. Walter had filled the margins with notes connecting their methods to his own research, suggesting this energy system wasn't a new discovery, but a rediscovery of lost knowledge. By midday, they ventured outside to survey the property's boundaries. The house sat on roughly 10 acres of mountain plateau, bordered by steeper terrain on three sides and the access trail on the fourth. Natural features had been subtly enhanced for defensive purposes: sight lines cleared in specific directions, boulder arrangements that would channel approach paths, even the stream positioned to create a natural barrier. Walter Miller had designed his home with security in mind. At the property's western edge, Jackson discovered solar panels cleverly disguised among the rocks. Conventional technology integrated with Walter's more exotic systems, suggesting his grandfather hadn't abandoned mainstream science entirely. This practical side offered Jackson some comfort amid the increasingly fantastical elements they were uncovering. As they completed their perimeter check, movement in the forest caught Jackson's attention. His hand moved instinctively to where his sidearm would have been during deployment, finding nothing. 8 months of civilian life hadn't dulled his threat assessment skills. Someone was watching them, someone more skilled than last night's intruders. "Take cover, Ethan. Military command, not to be questioned." The boy immediately ducked behind a boulder, as Jackson had taught him during their months of unstable living. Instead of confrontation, Jackson called out, "I know you're there. I'm not looking for trouble, but I'm prepared for it if necessary." A moment passed before an elderly woman emerged from the tree line, moving with the confident stride of someone who knew these mountains intimately. Her silver hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and she carried a walking stick that Jackson immediately recognized as more weapon than walking aid. The shotgun slung casually over her shoulder confirmed his assessment. "You're his grandson." The statement, not question, delivered in an Appalachian accent weathered by decades. She kept a calculating distance. "I'm Margaret Cooper." Lived on the neighboring ridge for 60 years. Was friends with your grandfather when everyone else thought he was crazy. Jackson maintained tactical awareness while evaluating this unexpected development. How do I know you're really his friend? The woman's weathered face cracked into a smile. Because I'm still alive. Walter had ways of discouraging false friends. She gestured toward the house. That place doesn't take kindly to those with bad intentions. Now, are you going to invite me in, or shall we keep shouting across the clearing? Jackson hesitated, weighing the risk against potential intelligence gain. Military protocols suggested caution, but they needed local knowledge. Come ahead slowly, my son is with me. Margaret approached, her gaze taking in every detail of Jackson and Ethan with shrewd assessment. The boy favors Walter around the eyes. Has he shown the sensitivity yet? Jackson didn't confirm or deny, unwilling to reveal Ethan's unusual connection to the house. Margaret nodded as if his silence was answer enough. It's good you're cautious. The Blackwoods have been sniffing around since before Walter passed. Been trying to buy this land for 40 years, ever since James Sr. got pushed out of their research partnership. When Walter died, they thought they'd finally get their chance. She settled her shrewd gaze on Jackson. How much has Walter told you? Just what he left in his journals. We only learned about this place 3 weeks ago. Margaret's eyebrows rose in surprise. He kept you separate all this time? Must have had his reasons. Walter never did anything without purpose. She gestured toward the house. Better continue this inside. Too many eyes in these mountains. Once seated in the main room, Margaret explained the history Jackson had never known. Walter Miller had been a geological engineer working for the Department of Energy in the 1970s, partnered with James Blackwood Sr. on alternative energy research. They had discovered unusual electromagnetic properties in certain Appalachian formations, properties that defied conventional physics. When Walter proposed careful study, James saw dollar signs, a way to transition the family's declining coal business into a new energy frontier. Their partnership fractured when James attempted premature exploitation, causing a mine collapse that killed 3 workers. Walter took the blame to protect the research, losing his career and reputation. He retreated to this remote location to continue his work, using family money and occasional government contacts who still believed in his research. The Blackwood family built their coal empire into Blackwood Resources, one of the largest energy conglomerates in the region. But James never forgot the technology that got away. He spent decades trying to replicate Walter's discovery without success. Now his son, Blake Blackwood, continues the obsession. Margaret leaned forward, voice dropping. Walter knew you'd come eventually, said the mountain would call the right miller when the time was right. Seems he was correct. Jackson struggled to reconcile this mystical language with the precision engineering he had seen throughout the house. So all this, the house, the energy system, it's real? Not just the delusions of an isolated old man? Margaret's laugh held no humor. The Blackwoods wouldn't waste 40 years chasing delusions. What Walter found could revolutionize energy production worldwide. No pollution, no resource depletion, just clean power drawn from the Earth's own systems. She gestured around them. This house runs on it, has for decades without drawing from the grid or burning a single gallon of fuel. What exactly is it? Jackson pressed, needing concrete information among the legends. Margaret shook her head. I'm no scientist. Walter called it resonance energy, something about the Earth's electromagnetic field being concentrated and amplified by specific mineral formations. This mountain sits at a junction of what he called telluric currents, natural electricity flowing through the ground. She pointed to the amber veins in the stone walls. That mineral he discovered channels it, stores it, lets you use it without disrupting the natural flow. Then why isn't this technology everywhere? Jackson's practical mind sought the gap in the narrative. Because it can't be commercialized the way Blackwood wants. Margaret's expression darkened. It can't be extracted and sold like coal or oil. The energy exists in relationship with the specific geological formations. Walter designed systems to work with it, not take from it. The moment you try to remove it or scale it beyond what the natural system can handle, she drew her finger across her throat in a universal gesture. Ethan, who had been quietly absorbing every word, suddenly spoke, like killing the golden goose. Margaret's weathered face softened as she looked at the boy. Exactly right, young man. Walter understood you can partner with nature or exploit it, But exploitation always fails eventually. The Blackwoods never understood that distinction. She stood, moving to the window to scan the surroundings with the habitual vigilance of someone who had lived under threat. The sheriff's one of them, Richard Blackwood, Blake's cousin, controls the entire county. They'll come soon, now that they know someone's living here. They'll try legal angles first. Tax liens, eminent domain, safety violations. When those fail, they'll move to less official methods. Jackson's military mind immediately began calculating defense scenarios. Are there others we can trust? Few. Most locals work for Blackwood in some capacity, but I've got contacts in the Forest Service who aren't under their thumb. Environmental groups too, though they move slow. She fixed Jackson with a steady gaze. How long were you planning to stay? He hadn't thought beyond finding shelter. Now, faced with inherited responsibility for something potentially world-changing, his perspective shifted. We've got nowhere else to go, and if what you and Walter say is true, we can't abandon this to the Blackwoods. Margaret nodded approval. Walter chose well. She reached into her jacket and produced a small leather pouch. He left this with me before he passed. Said to give it to you when you were ready to see beneath. Jackson accepted the pouch, opening it to find a small stone disc engraved with the same wolf symbol as the key. On its reverse were coordinates, different from those that had brought them to the house. Margaret gestured toward Walter's desk. There's a map in the bottom drawer. Those coordinates mark what Walter called the root core, the center of the entire energy system. It's what the Blackwoods really want. Ethan approached the desk without hesitation, opening the exact drawer as if he'd known all along which one contained the map. Jackson spread it across the table, a topographical map of the mountain with layers of handwritten notes and symbols overlaid. The coordinates matched a location higher up the mountain, maybe 2 hours' hike from the house. They'll have the area watched. Margaret's warning held the weight of experience. Best wait for full dark before you try. And prepare yourselves. What's up there will change everything you think you know. She departed before sunset, promising to return in 2 days with supplies and news from town. Jackson spent the remaining daylight hours securing the property, setting up natural alarm systems from his military training, preparing emergency packs, and studying Walter's journals for any tactical advantage they might provide. As darkness fell, Jackson debated whether to bring Ethan on the night expedition. Military protocol argued against exposing the child to unknown risks, but Walter's journals repeatedly emphasized that Ethan's natural sensitivity would be crucial for navigating the energy pathways. After careful consideration of their limited options, Jackson decided they would move together. Under the light of a half moon, they set out along a faint trail marked with the now familiar symbols. Jackson moved with ranger precision, every sense alert for surveillance or threats. Ethan followed closely, occasionally placing his hand on rock formations as if confirming their path. The boy's night vision seemed unnaturally acute, another manifestation of his connection to the mountain. The climb grew steeper as they ascended, the trail winding through ancient boulders arranged in patterns too regular to be natural. Some stones bore carvings similar to those in the house but older, weathered by centuries of exposure. Ethan traced them reverently, whispering translations that should have been impossible for him to know. This one says gateway, and this means heart of the mountain. Jackson had stopped questioning how his son understood these things. The evidence of Ethan's sensitivity had become too consistent to deny, though it defied his logical understanding of the world. An hour into their climb, Jackson detected movement ahead, the unmistakable pattern of human surveillance. He immediately guided Ethan into the shadow of a boulder formation, his body positioned protectively between his son and the potential threat. Two men with night vision equipment traversed the ridge above them, systematically scanning the terrain. Their gear was professional grade, military or high-end private security. Jackson recognized the sweep pattern of experienced personnel conducting area denial operations. They're looking for anyone approaching the root core. Jackson whispered, mouth close to Ethan's ear to minimize sound. We'll need to find another way around. Ethan placed his palm against the boulder, eyes closing in concentration. This way. His small hand found Jackson's, pulling him toward a narrow crevice nearly invisible in the darkness. The passage wound between massive stones, occasionally requiring them to turn sideways to progress. Jackson would have missed it entirely without Ethan's guidance. The air inside felt different, charged like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm. The amber mineral appeared with increasing frequency, forming veins that pulsed with faint illumination, providing just enough light to navigate by. The passage eventually opened into a hollow, shielded from above by overhanging stone, invisible to aerial surveillance. At its center stood a stone pillar taller than Jackson, its surface covered with the most intricate symbols they'd yet encountered. The amber mineral formed a complex matrix throughout the pillar, pulsing with slow, rhythmic light like a massive heartbeat. Ethan approached without hesitation, placing his small hand against the central symbol, the same wolf's head design as the key. The symbol illuminated at his touch, spreading light through the connecting patterns across the entire pillar. "It's a door, Dad, just like in my dreams." Jackson examined the pillar, his engineering mind recognizing it couldn't possibly be natural. The precision of the stone cutting, the integration of the mineral pathways. This was technology disguised as ancient monument. Near the base, he found a circular depression that matched the stone disc Margaret had given them. Remembering Walter's journals, Jackson aligned the disc according to the mathematical principles his grandfather had documented, not simply inserting it, but rotating it to specific positions that corresponded to astronomical alignments. With the final turn, a low, resonant tone emanated from the pillar, vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. The earth trembled. Leaves and small stones lifted momentarily, as if gravity had been locally suspended. A perfect circular seam appeared around the pillar, and the ground within that circle began to descend, revealing a spiral staircase leading into darkness beneath the mountain. Jackson activated the chemical light stick from his tactical pack, casting a green glow that reflected off walls lined with the amber mineral. The staircase descended in a perfect spiral, each step cut from solid stone with mathematical precision. Ethan moved forward without fear, drawn by something Jackson could sense only as a faint vibration in the air. As they descended, the ambient temperature increased, not to uncomfortable levels but to perfect warmth. The air remained fresh, suggesting an advanced ventilation system. The walls themselves emitted a soft amber luminescence that grew brighter with their presence, responding to them like living technology. The stairway ended in a vast circular chamber that defied structural possibility, a perfectly spherical space carved within solid mountain, its ceiling arching at least 30 feet above. The walls were lined with the amber mineral arranged in intricate patterns that Jackson recognized from Walter's more complex equations, three-dimensional representations of energy flow systems. At the chamber's center hovered a sphere of translucent crystal approximately 6 feet in diameter, suspended without visible support. Within it swirled patterns of light in constant motion, like liquid fire or electrified plasma, contained within perfect mathematical harmony. The sphere rotated slowly, maintaining position at the exact center of the chamber, regardless of air movement or approach. "This is it, the root core." Ethan's voice carried the reverence of recognition, though he'd never seen it before this moment. The boy walked forward as if in trance, hand extended toward the floating sphere. Jackson moved to stop him, military caution overriding curiosity, but some instinct made him hesitate. Walter's journals had emphasized repeatedly that the energy responded differently to those with sensitivity. If anyone could safely interact with this unknown technology, it would be Ethan. As the boy's fingers made contact with the sphere's surface, light surged through the chamber. The amber mineral in the walls pulsed in synchronized rhythm, and the sphere itself brightened to brilliant intensity without becoming painful to view. Ethan remained connected to it, eyes wide with wonder rather than fear. Jackson approached cautiously, his engineer's mind struggling to process what he was witnessing. No known technology could create these effects. Perfect anti-gravity, self-contained plasma, responsive illumination without heat damage. It violated every physical principle he'd studied. When he finally reached out to touch the sphere himself, the contact sent a shock of sensation through his entire body, not pain, but information, as if the sphere communicated directly with his nervous system. Images and knowledge flooded his consciousness. Walter in this chamber decades earlier, making the initial discovery. The intricate network of energy pathways connecting throughout the Appalachian Range. The catastrophic mining accident caused when James Blackwood Sr. attempted to force extraction. The delicate balance of the entire system capable of providing limitless clean energy if respected, or devastating release if exploited. And most strikingly, a clear understanding of why the Blackwoods wanted it, not just for energy production, but for the weapon potential in controlled release of the stored power. Jackson staggered back, overwhelmed by the download of information. The sphere dimmed slightly as contact broke, returning to its steady glow. Ethan remained connected, his expression serene, as if having a conversation Jackson couldn't hear. "It remembers, Grandpa," Ethan finally spoke, fingers still tracing patterns on the sphere's surface. "And it knows us. We're supposed to protect it." Jackson approached again, this time prepared for the information transfer. With his military and engineering background, he began to understand the technical aspects of what Walter had discovered. Not mystical energy, but advanced physics operating at the quantum level, where energy and matter blurred. The amber mineral served as both conductor and storage medium for what was essentially zero-point energy, drawn from the Earth's electromagnetic field and concentrated by the unique geological formations beneath the Appalachian Range. Walter hadn't built this system, he'd discovered it and learned to interface with technology that predated recorded history. The house above was his interpretation of ancient principles, adapted for modern habitation while maintaining respect for the energy's natural flow patterns. Most crucially, Jackson understood why it couldn't be commercialized or weaponized as the Blackwoods intended. The energy existed in symbiotic relationship with the mountain's geological structure. Attempts to extract it beyond the mountain's natural output would destabilize the entire system, potentially triggering seismic events throughout the range. Walter's method, living in harmony with the energy rather than extracting it, was the only sustainable approach. As this understanding solidified, Jackson heard movement above, the unmistakable sound of multiple people approaching the pillar entrance. His military senses instantly shifted to high alert, calculating their vulnerable position underground with limited exit options. "Ethan, we need to go. Now." Tactical urgency in his voice, grabbing his son's shoulder. But Ethan seemed reluctant to break contact with the sphere. "It's showing me how to hide it, Dad, how to make it invisible to their machines." Jackson hesitated, torn between immediate evacuation and the potential strategic advantage. "Trust your team," his commander had always emphasized, even when that team member was a 10-year-old boy with inexplicable abilities. "Do it quickly. We've got company." Ethan's hands moved in precise patterns across the sphere's surface, activating sequences that caused the amber minerals throughout the chamber to pulse in new rhythms. The sphere itself began to dim, not powering down, but somehow shifting its energy signature to a different frequency. Within moments, it had altered to a translucent state that seemed to bend light around it, rendering it nearly invisible to direct observation. The chamber's illumination faded to minimal levels, leaving only enough light to navigate by. From above came the sound of confusion. Men with detection equipment suddenly losing their readings, arguing about equipment malfunction. "They can't see it anymore." Ethan's voice held quiet confidence as he finally stepped away from the sphere. "The mountain is hiding itself." Jackson didn't question the impossibility of what he'd just witnessed. After everything else today, his definition of possible had fundamentally shifted. Instead, he focused on tactical retreat, guiding Ethan to a secondary passage he'd noted upon entry, a narrow tunnel that appeared to circle around rather than ascending directly to the entrance pillar. The passage proved to be part of an extensive network beneath the mountain, with junctions marked by the now familiar symbols. Ethan navigated with uncanny certainty, selecting routes that gradually worked their way upward while avoiding the main entrance where Blackwood's men were likely still searching. They emerged nearly a half-mile from the pillar, in a different section of the forest than they'd traversed earlier. The night had deepened, providing better cover for their return to the house. Jackson moved them quickly but cautiously, employing every evasion tactic from his military training. As they approached the property boundary, Jackson detected the unmistakable pattern of professional surveillance. Multiple observers positioned at strategic points around the house. Blackwood had escalated faster than expected, establishing a full monitoring perimeter. Rather than risk direct confrontation, Jackson diverted to an approach vector using the stream as cover. The water would mask their heat signatures from any thermal imaging equipment the observers might employ. Moving silently through the shallow water, they reached the natural pool behind the house undetected. Once inside, Jackson immediately implemented security protocols, securing entries, minimizing light signatures, and preparing defensive positions. Military training took precedence over the wonder and confusion of what they discovered. Protect the position first, process the implications later. Ethan, however, moved with calm purpose rather than alarm. The house is stronger now. I can feel it. He placed his palm against the stone wall, which responded with a subtle pulse of amber light. We woke something up in the mountain, and now it's paying attention. Jackson paused in his tactical preparations, watching as his son communicated with the house in some inexplicable way. The amber veins in the stone walls pulsed in patterns that corresponded to Ethan's touch, like a visual language between boy and building. After a moment, Ethan turned to him with certainty beyond his years. They can't get in unless we let them. The house won't allow it. Grandpa made sure of that. Jackson wanted to question this, to rely on tangible defenses rather than mysterious protections. But the evidence surrounded them, technology beyond conventional understanding, energy systems that responded to intention as much as physical interaction. Walter Miller hadn't been delusional. He'd been decades ahead of accepted science, working with principles most engineers couldn't begin to comprehend. As dawn approached, Jackson watched through carefully positioned observation points as Blackwood's surveillance team withdrew to less visible positions for daylight operations. They were professionals, likely ex-military or high-end security contractors, employing standard rotating surveillance patterns. Blackwood was investing significant resources in monitoring the property, further confirmation of the root core's value. The rising sun illuminated the valley below, revealing the small town nestled among autumn foliage. Somewhere down there, Blake Blackwood was planning his next move, unaware that Jackson had already seen the root core and understood what was at stake. Military strategy emphasized information advantage, knowing your opponent's objective while concealing your own knowledge. Ethan joined him at the window, unusually solemn for a boy his age. They'll keep coming, won't they? Jackson nodded, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. Yes, but we'll be ready. We have what they don't. We understand what this place really is. The house hummed around them, amber light pulsing gently through the stone veins like a living heartbeat. For the first time in 8 months of homelessness and uncertainty, Jackson felt the weight of purpose settling onto his shoulders. Not just survival, but protection of something genuinely important. Walter had chosen him for this responsibility, had somehow known he would come when needed. In the golden light of morning, father and son stood together in the house built from mountain stone, guardians of an inheritance far greater than property. Whatever came next, they would face it not as homeless wanderers, but as defenders of a legacy that could change the world, or destroy it if it fell into the wrong hands. The mountain had called them home, just as Walter had predicted. Now they would have to learn how to fight for it. The morning brought no reprieve from the sensation of being watched. Jackson tracked the surveillance team's movements from the windows, noting their professional rotation patterns, former military or high-end security, maintaining perimeter observation while staying just beyond property boundaries. Legal deniability combined with tactical effectiveness. He'd run similar operations during his Ranger days, recognized the precision in their positioning. Dawn light revealed the true extent of Walter's property, nestled in a natural bowl on the mountainside with defensive sightlines in all directions. No approach without exposure. Exactly how Jackson would have designed a secure position. Walter's strategic mind had extended beyond engineering to security. Jackson spread Walter's journals across the desk, analyzing them with the methodical focus he'd once applied to mission intelligence. The technical diagrams detailed an energy system that defied conventional physics: resonance capture through crystalline structures, energy transfer without heat loss, storage without degradation. Walter's formulas combined established science with theoretical applications decades ahead of current technology. Beyond technical specifications lay observations about the energy's behavior, how it responded to intention, how it seemed to recognize certain bloodlines, how it rejected exploitation attempts. The mountain wasn't merely a power source, but an integrated system that maintained its own equilibrium. Walter had spent decades mapping its patterns, building technology that worked in harmony rather than extraction. Ethan moved through the house with increasing confidence, instinctively finding hidden panels and controls Jackson would have missed. The boy's connection to the property deepened hourly, his small hands activating systems with precise movements no 10-year-old should have known. "Dad, I found something," Ethan's voice echoed from the library, where he stood before a section of bookshelf that had slid aside to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside lay a metal case containing documents, property deeds, legal filings, and correspondence with government agencies spanning decades. Jackson examined the papers, his tactical assessment shifting with each new revelation. Walter had secured ironclad ownership through multiple redundant legal channels, anticipating challenges to his claim: land surveys, mineral rights documentation, conservation easements, every possible angle protected through meticulous preparation. Most significant were the rejection notices from patent offices and scientific journals, dismissing Walter's research as theoretical overreach and unsubstantiated by current physical models. The academic establishment had labeled him a crank, while the energy industry had quietly monitored his work, recognizing potential they couldn't publicly acknowledge without disrupting their business models. A knock at the door interrupted their research. Jackson signaled Ethan to their prearranged position, the hidden room behind the kitchen pantry, equipped with emergency supplies and an escape tunnel Walter had engineered into the mountainside. Only when the boy was secure did Jackson approach the door, positioning himself at the optimal defensive angle. Margaret Cooper stood on the porch, accompanied by a tall man in Forest Service uniform. Her expression conveyed urgency without alarm. "They're coming. Sheriff filed the paperwork this morning claiming abandoned property rights. Says the taxes weren't paid since Walter's death. Pure fabrication, but it gives them legal cover to inspect." The Forest Service officer extended his hand. "Mark Daniels. I worked with Walter on conservation projects. The Blackwoods have been trying to get mineral rights to this area for decades. Their claims are bogus. Walter paid his taxes 5 years in advance before he passed. But Sheriff Blackwood controls the county records office, so papers have a way of disappearing." Jackson evaluated this man with military precision: authentic uniform with ranger qualification insignia, calloused hands consistent with the outdoor work, steady gaze indicating trustworthiness. A potential ally in a situation where they needed every advantage. Margaret placed a box of supplies on the kitchen table: food, ammunition, and a satellite phone, not dependent on local cell networks. "Blake Blackwood's calling a press conference this afternoon. Something about innovative energy research that requires expanded mineral testing in these mountains, claiming job creation and national security interests." Jackson considered the implications. The Blackwoods weren't simply pursuing Walter's research. They were positioning for government backing, using the current administration's energy independence rhetoric to justify their actions. Strategic escalation beyond local jurisdiction. Mark unfolded a Forest Service map, pointing to marked areas surrounding Walter's property. "Blackwood Resources has been buying up land parcels and mineral rights throughout the county. They've established research stations here, here, and here, all positioned to triangulate measurement readings toward this property. Their geological survey filings show they're tracking some kind of energy signature through the bedrock." Jackson shared a measured portion of what they discovered: the root core's existence without its exact location, the energy properties without the full implications. Military training had taught him information control, revealing only what advanced immediate tactical objectives. Mark's response confirmed Jackson's cautious approach. "Be careful who you trust with this, even me. Blake Blackwood has half the county on his payroll and informants everywhere. His company's been responsible for 3 chemical spills in local watersheds, all covered up through political connections. Whatever Walter found, it needs protection from industrial exploitation." After their visitors departed, Jackson implemented enhanced security protocols: early warning systems using fishing line and tin cans at perimeter points, observation blinds at strategic locations, and contingency plans for multiple scenarios. Military preparation provided structure amid scientific uncertainty. Ethan watched these preparations with the solemn understanding of a child who had already faced adult realities during their months of homelessness. "The mountain will help protect us too. It remembers Grandpa and doesn't want the bad men to find its heart." Jackson paused, struck by his son's certainty. "How do you know what it wants?" Ethan pressed his palm against the stone wall, where amber veins pulsed in responsive rhythm. The same way I know when you're worried, even when you don't say it. I can feel it. The security system Jackson had installed at the perimeter triggered shortly after noon, the distinctive vibration pattern of his improvised alarm indicating multiple vehicles approaching up the access road. He positioned himself at the observation window with binoculars, confirming what Margaret had warned. Sheriff Blackwood's patrol vehicle leading a black SUV with Blackwood Resources insignia, followed by a county assessor's car. Jackson engaged mission mode, tactical assessment, resource inventory, strategic positioning. He'd faced worse odds in combat zones with less preparation. Ethan was secured in the panic room, the property documentation was ready, and Jackson had preemptively recorded the encounter on the satellite phone's camera function to prevent manufactured evidence. The vehicles parked at the property boundary, disgorging 5 men who approached with the confident stride of those accustomed to intimidation tactics. Sheriff Richard Blackwood led the group, hand resting near his holstered sidearm, County Star gleaming against his tactical-style uniform. Beside him walked a younger man in an expensive suit that couldn't quite conceal his athletic build. James Blackwood, Jr., heir to the energy empire, his resemblance to the older executives in Walter's photographs unmistakable. Jackson opened the door before they knocked, tactical advantage in preemptive action. He filled the door frame with his ranger-trained posture, projecting authority without aggression. Sheriff Blackwood's voice carried practiced intimidation. Counties receive reports of trespassing and unauthorized occupation. This property's been flagged for tax delinquency since Walter Miller's passing. Jackson maintained neutral expression while activating the recording device in his pocket. I'm Jackson Miller, Walter's grandson and legal heir. I have all documentation proving ownership transfer and tax payment status. Would you like to see the certified paperwork? James Blackwood Jr. stepped forward, his corporate smile not reaching his eyes. There seems to be some confusion. Blackwood Resources has pending mineral rights claims on this entire mountain range, approved at the state level. We're simply conducting a property assessment as part of our due diligence. Jackson recognized the approach. Corporate speak masking tactical maneuvering. Legal terms as smokescreens for territorial acquisition. The military taught recognition of enemy deception strategies, and corporate versions followed similar patterns. I'm assuming you have a warrant for this assessment? Jackson kept his tone neutral but firm, knowing no such document existed. And I'd appreciate seeing identification from everyone present on my private property. The sheriff's hand tightened on his belt. Son, you're new here, so I'll give you some friendly advice. The Blackwood family has been the economic backbone of this county since before your grandfather abandoned his responsibilities. We have ways of doing things that benefit the community. Walter never understood that. Jackson maintained eye contact, unintimidated. I understand completely, Sheriff. I also understand trespassing laws, harassment statutes, and constitutional protections against unlawful search and seizure. His military bearing carried the confidence of someone who had faced actual combat rather than small-town intimidation. Would you like to continue this conversation with my property rights attorney present? I've been recording since you arrived to ensure an accurate record. James Jr.'s expression shifted, reassessing Jackson with newfound respect. Let's not escalate unnecessarily. My father worked with Walter for years before their professional disagreement. We've simply been monitoring geological anomalies that could affect regional stability. Your grandfather's property sits at a crucial measurement point. Jackson recognized the pivot, from intimidation to false collegiality, standard negotiation tactics when force failed. We have no issues with scientific research conducted from public lands or with proper permits. But this property remains private, and any access requires my explicit permission. The sheriff stepped forward, aggression overriding strategy. Now listen here. James Jr. placed a restraining hand on the sheriff's arm, corporate calculation replacing familial loyalty. We understand your position, Mr. Miller. Perhaps we can schedule a proper meeting to discuss potential collaboration? Our researchers have been tracking energy signatures that align with Walter's old work. We might have resources to help complete what he started. The attempt at manipulation was transparent to Jackson's trained eye, false common ground as prelude to infiltration. I'll consider your request and contact your office if I'm interested in discussions. For now, I'll need to ask you to leave the property." As the men retreated, James Jr. turned back with practiced casualness. "One more thing, Mr. Miller. The county council is reviewing all remote properties for fire safety compliance next week. Be sure your unique dwelling meets code requirements. Would be a shame if violations forced condemnation until repairs could be made." The threat hung in the air between them, bureaucratic warfare as their next tactical approach. Jackson had seen similar strategies in regions where direct military action was politically unfavorable, paper attacks against positions that couldn't be taken by force. Once the vehicles departed, Jackson maintained vigilance, tracking their movement patterns to identify surveillance positions they might establish. Only after confirming their complete withdrawal did he retrieve Ethan from the panic room. The boy emerged with calm focus unusual for his age. "They want to steal the mountain's heart." I could feel them thinking about it, especially the man in the expensive suit. He's dreamed about it for a long time. Jackson had long since stopped questioning his son's perceptions. Walter's journals documented similar sensitivity, an extrasensory awareness of intention, emotional states registered through the property's energy field. Scientific explanation eluded him, but tactical advantage was clear. Ethan provided intelligence on adversary motivation that conventional observation couldn't detect. They'll come back with different tactics. Jackson began securing documentation, photographing every legal paper with a satellite phone for off-site backup. "We need to understand exactly what we're protecting and how to defend it legally and physically." The house responded to their increased activity, amber veins pulsing with heightened intensity as if sensing their urgency. Ethan moved through rooms with intuitive purpose, activating systems that had remained dormant during their initial exploration, ventilation channels that cleared dust from hidden areas, lighting configurations that illuminated previously shadowed corners, even water flow patterns that revealed additional storage areas beneath floor panels. Jackson focused on Walter's technical journals, applying his engineering background to decipher the more complex aspects of the energy system. The house functioned as both receiver and distributor, drawing resonance energy from the root core and channeling it through the amber mineral network embedded throughout the structure. The technology combined principles from quantum physics, crystallography, and electromagnetic field theory in applications decades beyond current implementation. Most concerning were Walter's warnings about destabilization. The energy existed in perfect equilibrium within the mountain's geological structure. Attempts to extract or redirect beyond certain parameters could trigger cascade effects throughout the entire system. Power surges, seismic disruptions, even localized electromagnetic pulses that would disable conventional electronics. The Blackwood's triangulation efforts suddenly made strategic sense. They were attempting to map the energy network through surface measurements, likely planning extraction points that bypassed Walter's property entirely. But without understanding the integrated nature of the system, such extraction attempts could prove catastrophically destabilizing. Night fell with thunderstorms rolling across the mountains, lightning illuminating the valley in strobing flashes. Jackson maintained regular perimeter checks despite the downpour, military discipline overriding physical discomfort. The surveillance team had withdrawn to more distant positions but remained present, professional operators maintaining visual contact while staying beyond property boundaries. Jackson was completing his third perimeter circuit when Ethan's scream cut through the storm noise, raw terror unlike anything he'd heard from his son before. He sprinted back to the house, tactical movement forgotten in parental instinct, finding the boy collapsed on the floor of the main room, body convulsing in violent seizure. Ethan's skin burned with impossible fever. His eyes rolled back, showing only whites, limbs jerking in uncontrolled spasms. Jackson applied seizure management techniques from combat medical training, clearing space around the boy, protecting his head, checking airway clearance. But the fever continued climbing beyond normal physiological thresholds. The nearest hospital was 40 minutes away in good weather, and the storm had likely made mountain roads impassable. Jackson evaluated tactical options with the cold clarity of combat decision-making, calculating survival probabilities against available resources. Walter's journals mentioned unusual properties in the stream water, mineral composition with therapeutic effects. Indigenous populations had reportedly used similar springs for ceremonial healing before mining operations destroyed most natural formations. Walter had documented experiments showing accelerated cellular regeneration in samples exposed to the water. Decision made, Jackson wrapped Ethan in waterproof material from their emergency supplies and carried him into the storm, moving with controlled urgency toward the natural pool behind the house. Rain lashed against them as lightning illuminated their path in surreal flashes, the storm intensifying as they approached the water source. A massive pine crashed across their path, its trunk still smoking from a lightning strike. Jackson vaulted over it with Ethan secured against his chest, military training enabling fluid movement even with the added weight. The boy's breathing had grown dangerously shallow, his skin temperature exceeding sustainable limits. The pool glowed with subtle luminescence despite the storm darkness, the amber minerals in its bed creating an ethereal underwater constellation. Jackson tested the water temperature, consistently warm despite the cold rain, maintaining perfect thermal equilibrium through some unknown mechanism. With methodical precision born of medical training, Jackson calculated immersion parameters, temperature differential, exposure duration, submersion depth for optimal effect without respiratory risk. He lowered Ethan gradually into the glowing water, maintaining head support while monitoring vital signs. The water's reaction was immediate and inexplicable. Intensified luminescence where it contacted Ethan's skin, swirling patterns forming around his body as if responding to his presence. The boy's convulsions slowed, then stopped completely, replaced by a peaceful stillness that terrified Jackson more than the seizures had. Just as panic threatened to override his training, Ethan's eyes opened. Alert but different, pupils expanded to unusual dilation, irises reflecting the water's amber glow. The boy sat up in the pool, moving with fluid grace, unlike his normal childish energy. "It's inside me now," his voice carried harmonic undertones, resonating with the storm's distant thunder. The mountain's voice. "I can hear everything it knows." Before Jackson could respond, Ethan began drawing in the mud beside the pool, complex equations and circuit diagrams identical to Walter's most advanced theoretical work. His small finger moved with precision no child should possess, recreating mathematical concepts Jackson recognized from graduate-level engineering courses. The energy flows through pathways beneath us, ancient rivers of power the earth made before people existed. Grandpa found how to listen to them. The Blackwoods want to cut them open and let the power bleed out. Jackson watched in strategic silence, compartmentalizing emotional response to focus on intelligence gathering. Ethan was accessing knowledge beyond his education or experience, information valuable to their defense of the property and its secrets. The boy continued drawing, adding layers of complexity to the diagram, a complete map of energy pathways extending throughout the mountain range, convergence points where power concentrated, vulnerable junctions where disruption would cause systemic failure. Strategic intelligence no surveillance operation could have provided. The mountain remembers everyone who tries to hurt it. It showed me what happened when Mr. Blackwood's father tried to take the energy by force. 3 men died when the tunnel collapsed. Not an accident. The mountain protected itself. Jackson recognized the tactical implications immediately. The energy system possessed some form of automated defense mechanism, environmental response to exploitation attempts. Walter hadn't simply discovered a power source. He'd established communication with an integrated natural system that maintained its own security protocols. He carried Ethan back to the house once the diagrams were complete, the boy's fever entirely gone, replaced by unnatural alertness. The storm abated as they returned, clouds dispersing to reveal stars of unusual brightness, as if atmospheric conditions had somehow clarified. Inside, Ethan moved with purpose to Walter's desk, selecting specific journals and opening them to pages he couldn't possibly have memorized. He arranged them in sequence, creating a reference system Jackson recognized from military intelligence, primary sources supporting tactical assessment, organized for operational planning. Grandpa built protection systems throughout the house. Ethan pointed to diagrams Walter had labeled resonance shielding, technology designed to modulate the energy field around the property. The mountain can hide itself from their machines if we activate the right sequence. But we need to find the master control at the core first. So, Jackson began formulating defensive strategy, perimeter security, resource management, contingency planning, while Ethan translated Walter's theoretical concepts into practical applications. Their roles had somehow reversed, the child providing technical expertise while Jackson applied tactical implementation. A sound from the rear of the house interrupted their planning, the distinctive click of a window latch being manipulated by skilled hands. Jackson moved silently into combat stance, signaling Ethan to take cover in the prearranged safe position. He advanced through darkened rooms with ranger stealth, tracking the intruder through subtle air displacement and floor vibration patterns. The figure in the laboratory moved with professional precision, examining equipment with practiced efficiency, photographing journals with a specialized camera. Not Blackwood's security team. Different movement pattern, different objective. This was data collection, not surveillance or intimidation. Jackson closed distance using shadow concealment, then executed a standard takedown maneuver. Control without permanent injury, restraint without excessive force. The intruder countered with unexpected skill, breaking his grip using advanced defensive techniques before attempting counteroffensive movement. The struggle continued in tactical silence, both combatants recognizing the advantage of stealth over strength. Jackson finally secured position, pinning the intruder against the lab table with controlled pressure against critical nerve points. Light from amber veins illuminated a woman's face, mid-30s, East Asian features, expression showing calculation rather than fear. Her tactical gear indicated professional operation, but her equipment focused on scientific rather than military objectives. You move like someone with combat training. Her voice carried calm assessment despite her compromised position. Walter didn't mention military background in his grandson. Jackson maintained restraint pressure while conducting threat assessment. Professional intruder with knowledge of Walter and apparent expectation of Jackson's presence. Not Blackwood's team, different operational signature entirely. You have 30 seconds to explain why I shouldn't consider you a hostile infiltrator. Dr. Rebecca Chen. I was Walter's research assistant for his final project. The woman remained perfectly still, understanding the tactical dynamics between them. He sent me data packets monthly for 3 years, tracking energy fluctuations throughout the system. When the readings spiked yesterday, I knew someone had accessed the core. The timeline matched his predictions for your arrival. Jackson noted details supporting her claim. Laboratory familiarity indicating prior access, technical knowledge of equipment purpose, reference to specific data patterns documented in Walter's journals. But strategic caution prevailed over initial evidence. Prove connection to Walter. Specific details only a legitimate associate would know. The woman recited laboratory equipment modification dates, journal entry sequences, even Walter's preferred tea blend for late research sessions. Technical information verifiable through documentation, personal details demonstrating actual interaction. Jackson released pressure incrementally, maintaining tactical advantage while allowing conversation to develop. Why break in rather than knock? Blackwood has surveillance on all approach vectors. Rebecca straightened her clothing with practiced efficiency. Walter established protocol for covert access during observation periods. The southwest window has a specialized lock that responds to specific magnetic frequency. I've been monitoring this property since his passing, ensuring the Blackwoods didn't gain access before you arrived. Jackson maintained strategic skepticism while acknowledging potential alliance value. What exactly was your research with Walter? Rebecca moved to the central workstation, activating a sequence that illuminated hidden diagrams on the laboratory walls, complex energy pathway maps extending throughout the Appalachian Range. Walter discovered what he called resonance energy, natural electromagnetic pathways that concentrate at specific geological formations. The amber mineral serves as both conductor and storage medium, allowing controlled interface with energy that conventional science barely acknowledges. She accessed a hidden compartment containing research materials Jackson hadn't discovered. Specialized measuring devices, crystalline samples in varying formations, and data storage units with custom protection. The energy exists in perfect equilibrium throughout the mountain range, following pathways established over millions of years. Walter developed technology to access it without disruption, living with the energy rather than extracting it. Jackson assessed strategic implications, energy independence without environmental destruction, power generation without corporate control. The military applications alone would transform global security dynamics, and the Blackwoods want to extract it conventionally. Rebecca's expression darkened. James Sr. was Walter's research partner at the Department of Energy. When they discovered the first resonance pathway, James immediately saw weapons potential and extraction profit. He attempted forced extraction at a secondary site, causing a mine collapse that killed 3 workers. The laboratory lights pulsed in responsive rhythm, as if the house itself reacted to the narrative. Rebecca noted the phenomenon with scientific interest. The energy responds to intention. Exploitation attempts trigger automated defense mechanisms within the system, what Walter called sympathetic resistance. The mountain literally fights back against harmful extraction. Jackson integrated this information with Ethan's earlier revelations, tactical assessment expanding to include natural defense systems alongside human security protocols. Blake Blackwood has continued his father's obsession, investing millions in detection technology. His company has established measurement stations throughout the region, attempting to map the energy network without accessing Walter's property. Rebecca activated a monitoring screen showing surveillance footage of multiple research stations. They're getting closer to understanding the full system. If they identify enough secondary access points, they could attempt simultaneous extraction that might overcome the natural resistance. A soft sound from the doorway interrupted their discussion. Ethan stood watching them, his expression showing neither fear nor surprise at the stranger's presence. She's telling the truth. The mountain recognizes her. She helped Grandpa build the protection systems. Rebecca studied the boy with scientific curiosity, transitioning to understanding. You've experienced direct interface with the core. The sympathetic connection Walter theorized about. Certain individuals can establish neural synchronization with the energy field. Ethan approached with calm confidence beyond his years. It showed me everything, how the energy moves, how the mountain protects itself, how the bad men are trying to find ways inside. His small finger traced patterns on the laboratory table that illuminated in response to his touch. We need to activate the master shield before they find another way in. Rebecca's professional demeanor shifted, scientific detachment giving way to urgency. Blake's team installed new equipment yesterday at 3 convergence points surrounding this property. Their energy signatures indicate advanced extraction technology being tested. We have days at most before they attempt synchronized access. The house lights pulsed in accelerated rhythm, amber veins brightening throughout the structure. Ethan placed his palm against the central stone pillar, his expression becoming distant as if listening to voices only he could hear. They're coming now, many trucks, machines that drill into rock, men with guns. They found something in town, papers that give them permission to take the land. Jackson shifted immediately to defensive posture, tactical assessment focusing on immediate threat response. How much time? Before Rebecca could respond, the distant sound of vehicles penetrated the night. Multiple heavy engines approaching up the mountain road with a distinctive growl of industrial equipment. Rebecca activated Walter's monitoring system, displaying thermal signatures moving up the access road. A convoy of vehicles, including construction equipment, transport trucks, and what appeared to be private security vehicles. Blake must have expedited the mineral rights claim. Rebecca's voice carried professional assessment despite evident concern. They're bringing extraction equipment, core drills designed to access the resonance pathways directly. Jackson calculated defensive options with military precision. Legal counters would require time they didn't have. Direct confrontation against superior numbers risked escalation beyond their control. Strategic withdrawal would abandon the property to exploitation. Ethan watched the approaching convoy with unusual calmness, his hands still connected to the stone pillar. The mountain says we should activate the shield now. His small fingers began tracing specific patterns across the pillar's surface, activating sequences that caused the amber veins throughout the house to pulse in synchronized rhythm. Rebecca recognized the activation sequence, moving quickly to the laboratory's central console. Walter designed an emergency protocol, a resonance field that masks the energy signature from detection equipment. It won't stop physical intrusion, but it will hide what they're looking for. The console illuminated with amber light as she entered a complex activation code, systems throughout the house responding with increased energy output. The stone beneath their feet vibrated with subtle resonance as power flowed through pathways embedded in the foundation. Outside, the approaching vehicles had reached the property boundary. Floodlights swept across the clearing, illuminating the house in harsh artificial glare that contrasted with the amber glow emanating from within. Jackson positioned himself at the front entrance, tactical stance balanced between defensive capability and non-threatening appearance. Strategic calculation favored initial restraint over immediate countermeasures. Assess opposition strength and intention before committing to specific defense protocols. The lead vehicle stopped at the property line, disgorging James Blackwood Jr. and Sheriff Blackwood, followed by men in business suits carrying documentation folders and others in tactical gear with peripheral awareness indicating security training. Behind them, heavy equipment idled with hydraulic systems primed for immediate deployment. We have limited options. Jackson's military assessment focused on tactical reality rather than desired outcome. They have legal documentation, local law enforcement, and superior numbers. Rebecca moved to his side, scientific expertise complementing his tactical knowledge. The shield is active. They can't detect the energy signature now, but they can still physically access the property if they have legal authorization. Ethan remained connected to the stone pillar, his expression showing concentration beyond normal childhood capability. The mountain says there's another way. We can make them leave without fighting. The boy's fingers traced new patterns across the stone surface, activating sequences previously dormant. The amber veins throughout the house pulsed with increasing intensity, energy flowing through pathways that connected to the ground beneath them. The earth trembled slightly, a localized vibration that spread from the house toward the property boundary. Where it reached the vehicles, electrical systems flickered and failed, lights extinguishing, engines stalling, electronic devices displaying error messages before shutting down completely. The mountain created a small EMP pulse. Rebecca's scientific understanding provided tactical context. Walter theorized the energy could disrupt electrical fields without permanent damage. It's a warning shot. Through the window, Jackson observed confusion spreading through the Blackwood team. Security personnel checking weapons that no longer functioned, technicians attempting to restart equipment that remained unresponsive, executives examining documentation illuminated by flashlights since vehicle lights had failed. The mountain will only escalate if they keep coming. Ethan's voice carried certainty beyond his years, knowledge accessed through channels Jackson couldn't comprehend. It remembers what happened last time they tried to take the energy by force. Jackson recognized the tactical advantage in psychological operations, demonstrating capability without revealing full strength, creating uncertainty that disrupted opponent decision-making. The power disruption provided strategic pause without direct confrontation. As they watched, the ground trembled again with increased intensity. Fissures appeared in the earth between the property boundary and the vehicles, widening into crevasses that effectively blocked vehicle access to the house. No structural damage occurred beyond the targeted area, precision effect rather than generalized destruction. The mountain has created a defensive perimeter. Rebecca's scientific assessment remained professional despite evident wonder. It's responding to Ethan's interface, implementing Walter's protection protocols with environmental manipulation. Through the windows, Jackson observed the Blackwood team retreating to minimum safe distance. Executives engaged in heated discussion, while security personnel established defensive positions facing the property. Tactical stalemate rather than withdrawal, regrouping rather than abandoning objective. They'll be back with different approach vectors. Jackson's military assessment focused on enemy capability rather than immediate victory. This bought time, not resolution. Rebecca nodded agreement, scientific perspective, aligning with tactical evaluation. Blake Blackwood has invested too much to abandon the objective. He'll seek alternative access points to the energy network. We need to secure the root core before he finds another way in. Ethan finally disconnected from the stone pillar, his expression returning to normal childhood awareness, though his eyes retained unusual focus. The mountain will help us, but we need to go to its heart to make it safe. The boy's certainty carried conviction beyond his years, knowledge accessed through channels neither military training nor scientific education could explain. We need to go tonight while they're scared and confused. Jackson began immediate preparation for mountain insertion operation. Equipment check, supply inventory, route planning using Walter's maps combined with Ethan's enhanced knowledge of the terrain. Military procedure provided structure amid scientific uncertainty, tactical planning, transforming theoretical defense into actionable security protocols. The house continued pulsing with amber light, energy flowing through ancient pathways embedded in stone, constructed by a man who had somehow bridged the gap between modern science and natural forces beyond conventional understanding. Whatever awaited them at the root core would determine not just their future, but potentially the balance between exploitation and harmony with forces greater than human comprehension. Sometimes salvation hides in places you never thought to look, and sometimes the earth itself remembers who treated it with respect. Jackson shouldered his pack, military readiness merging with parental protection as they prepared to venture deeper into the mountain's secrets, guided by a child who somehow carried the mountain's voice within him. Nightfall concealed their retreat from the property, darkness providing tactical advantage, as Jackson led them through forest paths no vehicle could navigate. Margaret Cooper's cabin, nestled on an adjacent ridge far from marked trails, offered temporary sanctuary while they formulated response strategy. The single-room structure, built from weathered logs and local stone, blended with the surrounding wilderness. Another Guardian's outpost in Walter's protective network. Margaret stoked the wood stove while they spread Walter's maps across her handmade table. I've been monitoring Blackwood's radio frequencies on this old CB setup. They've pulled back to regroup at their base camp 2 miles south, calling in specialized equipment from their research facility in Tennessee. Something about harmonic dampening technology to neutralize what they're calling anomalous defensive measures. Jackson assessed their tactical position with military precision. The Blackwoods controlled local law enforcement, had superior numbers, and possessed resources to sustain prolonged siege. Conventional defense would ultimately fail against such overwhelming advantage. Strategic asymmetric response offered their only viable counter. We need to change the battlefield parameters. Jackson activated the satellite phone Margaret had provided, scrolling through contacts from his Ranger days. Former squad mates now working in specialized fields: environmental law enforcement, digital security, alternative energy development. Network assets who understood the value of unconventional resources against institutional power. First call connected to Daniel Ramirez, former combat engineer now serving with the Environmental Protection Agency's Enforcement Division. The conversation lasted precisely 8 minutes. Encrypted information exchange followed by commitment to expedited response. Second call reached Sarah Tanner, tactical communications specialist, transitioned to digital security consulting. Agreement secured for immediate action against Blackwood's information infrastructure. Rebecca monitored the electronic surveillance detection equipment she'd brought from her research station, confirming secure communication parameters. I've prepared a data package from Walter's research, heavily edited to protect location specifics, but comprehensive enough to establish scientific legitimacy. The energy principles can be validated by any competent physicist, creating public scientific interest that would complicate Blackwood's private exploitation. Jackson nodded approval, strategic information deployment supporting their defensive position. Upload it through secured channels, make sure source attribution remains untraceable. Rebecca connected specialized equipment to Margaret's ancient dial-up internet connection, bandwidth limitations requiring compressed data transmission protocols. The first phase of their information counteroffensive began transferring, academic channels lighting up with notifications about breakthrough energy research from anonymous sources. Ethan sat cross-legged before the wood stove, small hands tracing patterns in the air that mimicked the energy flows he'd mapped earlier. His expression showed concentration beyond typical childhood capability, accessing knowledge through channels neither military training nor scientific education could explain. The mountain says there's a hidden way to the heart, different from the path we took before. The Blackwoods are watching all the main trails, but they don't know about the old tunnels the water carved long ago. Margaret unfolded a faded map from a concealed floor compartment, yellowed paper showing topographical features with handwritten notations dating back decades. Walter charted these passages 40 years ago. The eastern ridge has a limestone cave system that connects to the deeper formations beneath the mountain. Most entrances collapsed during mining operations in the 70s, but this one, she indicated a marked position 3 miles northeast, was too remote for industrial activity. Walter used it for research access during periods of heavy surveillance. Jackson calculated travel parameters, terrain difficulty, estimated transit time, resource requirements for successful insertion. Military training emphasized comprehensive preparation over rushed deployment. They'd need specialized equipment for cave navigation, emergency supplies for contingencies, and tactical communication protocol for operation security. Margaret's storage shed contained equipment that revealed the true extent of her partnership with Walter. Climbing gear, specialized lighting systems designed for minimal electromagnetic signature, even compact breathing apparatus for potentially compromised air quality in enclosed spaces. Preparations made decades earlier for exactly this scenario. While Jackson inventoried equipment, Rebecca calibrated detection instruments or to track energy pathway signatures through stone barriers. Walter's research identified specific frequency ranges that indicated active channels, allowing navigation through otherwise indistinguishable cave systems. By dawn, preparations were complete, packs containing essential equipment, emergency supplies, and communication gear distributed according to each person's carrying capacity and functional role. Jackson conducted final briefing with military precision, establishing chain of command, communication protocols, and contingency procedures for various emergency scenarios. Margaret would remain at the cabin, maintaining communication relay and monitoring Blackwood's movements through her surveillance network. The older woman checked the shotgun resting beside her chair, with practiced efficiency that spoke of decades living self-sufficiently in hostile territory. They departed at first light, moving through forest with disciplined stealth, Jackson on point position, utilizing ranger infiltration techniques, Rebecca following with detection equipment, monitoring energy signatures, Ethan between them maintaining continuous connection with the mountain's guiding presence. The formation maximized security while protecting their most valuable asset, the boys' inexplicable ability to interface with the energy network. Sunrise painted the ridgeline in copper and gold, autumn foliage creating natural camouflage as they traversed steeper terrain. Jackson noted multiple surveillance positions in the valley below. Blackwood security teams establishing observation grid covering all main approaches to Walter's property. Professional deployment pattern indicating military background, equipment signature suggesting private security contractors rather than local personnel. They circumvented the surveillance network by ascending rather than crossing, utilizing elevation advantages that placed them above detection parameters. The limestone cave entrance appeared as Margaret had described, a narrow vertical fissure partially concealed by fallen timber and accumulated brush. Natural camouflage enhanced by deliberate arrangement suggesting Walter's methodical preparation. Jackson secured climbing ropes while Rebecca prepared specialized lighting, chemiluminescent markers that provided navigation reference without electronic signatures that might trigger detection equipment. Ethan watched the preparations with unusual calmness, apparent certainty in their course providing confidence beyond his years. I can feel the pathways beneath us, like rivers of light under the rock. The mountain wants to show us the way through. The descent into darkness required technical climbing skills, narrow fissure transitioning to vertical shaft that extended nearly 60 feet before opening into larger cavern system. Jackson managed Ethan's safety line with precise control, military training ensuring secure transitions despite challenging conditions. Rebecca followed with scientific equipment protected in specialized impact-resistant casing, her movements showing rock climbing experience beyond casual recreation. The cavern network extended beyond natural formation parameters, evidence of ancient water flow creating passages subsequently modified by human intervention. Jackson recognized tool marks in certain tunnel sections, precision cutting techniques rather than mining explosives, methodical expansion rather than resource extraction. Walter improved these tunnels. Rebecca confirmed Jackson's observation, scientific assessment aligning with tactical evaluation. These support structures utilize resonance principles to maintain stability, the energy itself reinforcing the surrounding stone matrix. Their progress followed detection equipment readings combined with Ethan's intuitive guidance, navigating tunnel systems that periodically connected with amber mineral veins glowing with subtle illumination. The mineral concentration increased as they advanced deeper, providing natural lighting that rendered their chemical markers redundant in primary passages. 4 hours into their underground transit, Rebecca's equipment detected anomalous energy signature from lateral passage, frequency pattern indicating technological interference rather than natural variation. Jackson signaled halt, transitioning to stealth reconnaissance protocol. He advanced alone through narrower connecting tunnel, tactical movement minimizing sound transmission through stone. The passage opened to larger chamber containing evidence of recent human activity. Scientific equipment installed on stone surfaces, sensors embedded in walls, data collection systems still actively recording. Jackson recognized military-grade technology adapted for specialized research. Hardware designed for classified applications repurposed for civilian exploitation. Blackwood has established subsurface monitoring station. Jackson reported findings after returning to their position. They're mapping energy pathways throughout the network, likely seeking alternate access to the root core. Detection grid extends 200 meters in all directions from their equipment. Rebecca examined the sensor specifications from Jackson's description, scientific knowledge providing tactical intelligence. Those sensors detect standard electromagnetic frequencies, but wouldn't recognize the shifted harmonic spectrum Walter developed for secure access. The protective frequency modulation Ethan activated should mask our presence if we maintain proper distance from their equipment. Their advance continued with enhanced caution, navigation route adjusted to maintain separation from detection grid while still progressing toward their objective. The tunnel system descended deeper, ambient temperature increasing as geological pressure indicators suggested proximity to significant fault line, natural conditions that Walter's journals had identified as conducive to energy concentration. The passage structure changed substantially at deeper levels, transitioning from natural formation to precisely engineered tunnels with geometric precision impossible through conventional mining techniques. Walls contained embedded crystalline structures arranged in mathematical patterns, ceiling supports integrated with amber mineral veins, creating self-illuminating passageways. This wasn't made by Grandpa. Ethan's whisper carried certainty as his fingers traced wall patterns. These tunnels are really old. The mountain showed me people found these pathways long before anyone built cities. Rebecca documented the architectural features with scientific objectivity despite evident wonder. Walter's journals mentioned evidence of prehistoric human interaction with the energy network. He theorized that ancient civilizations possessed understanding of these principles that was subsequently lost through cultural disruption and knowledge suppression. The engineered section extended for nearly a mile before opening into vast underground chamber. Unlike anything Jackson had encountered in extensive global deployment, cathedral-like space carved from living rock, ceiling arching nearly 100 feet above, walls containing intricate, symbolic patterns illuminated by amber light, pulsing in rhythmic sequence. Central platform held what appeared to be control interface, crystalline structures arranged in concentric circles surrounding central pedestal. This chamber clearly predated modern civilization, yet contained technological elements beyond current scientific understanding. Perfect acoustic properties that carried the slightest sound with undiminished clarity, atmospheric regulation maintaining optimal breathing conditions despite depth, even gravitational anomalies causing certain crystalline formations to hover slightly above their base platforms. Rebecca activated specialized scanning equipment, scientific discipline providing structure for analyzing incomprehensible discovery. These formations match mathematical sequences Walter documented in theoretical models. The crystalline structures function as both information storage and energy direction system, a technology that uses molecular arrangement rather than electronic components. Before they could advance further, distant sound echoed through connecting passages, mechanical equipment operation, voices carrying through perfect acoustic channels. Jackson immediately established defensive position, tactical assessment identifying optimal cover locations while maintaining sight lines to both chamber entrance and central platform. Blackwood's team has accessed the tunnel network from another entrance. His whisper carried just enough for Rebecca and Ethan to hear without sound propagation reaching potential hostiles. Their equipment signatures indicate at least 8 personnel with specialized gear. Rebecca checked detection instruments, scientific data confirming tactical evaluation. They're using sonic mapping technology, sending acoustic pulses through the stone and measuring return patterns, essentially echolocation for cave systems. They'll identify this chamber within minutes at current scanning rate. Tactical options narrowed to immediate action versus strategic withdrawal. Jackson calculated success probabilities for various scenarios, combat training emphasizing mission objective over confrontation. They needed to reach the central platform before Blackwood's team arrived, activate whatever protection system Walter had referenced in his journals, then execute tactical retreat through secondary passages. Ethan moved toward the central platform with calm certainty, apparently untroubled by approaching hostiles. The mountain says we need to be at the center when they arrive. It wants them to see what they're trying to steal. Jackson's tactical assessment conflicted with strategic instinct. Defensive positions offered better security than exposed central location. Yet throughout this operation, Ethan's intuitive guidance had proven more accurate than conventional military protocol. Decision required trusting information sources beyond tactical doctrine. We moved to center position, establish 360-degree awareness, prepare for nonviolent confrontation unless directly threatened. Jackson established operational parameters that balance mission objectives against security requirements. Rebecca prepared documentation equipment. If Blackwood's team reaches this chamber, we need unaltered record of their response. They advanced to central platform, Rebecca activating specialized recording equipment designed for scientific documentation. The crystalline structures intensified illumination as they approached, amber light pulsing in accelerated rhythm that synchronized with their movement patterns. The entire chamber appeared to respond to their presence. Energy signatures, shifting in harmonic progressions documented in Walter's theoretical models. Ethan reached the central pedestal without hesitation, small hands finding contact points that adult observers might have missed entirely. The pedestal surface reconfigured beneath his touch, crystalline elements shifting position to create interface proportion for his physical dimensions. The mountain remembers me from before. It's been waiting for someone to complete the connection Grandpa started. The boy's fingers moved across crystalline surfaces with practiced precision, activating sequences that caused chamber-wide response, illumination patterns changing frequency, acoustic properties shifting harmonic range, even gravitational parameters altering subtle pressure throughout the space. The central platform began generating holographic projection, three-dimensional energy pathway map extending throughout the entire mountain range, connection points illuminated with varying intensity indicating active versus dormant sectors. The approaching team reached connecting passage just as the holographic display stabilized, their voices echoing with sudden clarity as perfect acoustic properties carried sound throughout the chamber. Jackson maintained defensive readiness while presenting non-threatening posture, strategic position allowing both diplomatic engagement and tactical response if necessary. 8 individuals entered the chamber in standard tactical formation, 6 security personnel with specialized equipment, 1 technical specialist managing detection instruments, and James Blackwood Jr. himself directing operations from central position. Their advance halted immediately upon observing the activated platform and its occupants, surprise disrupting operational cohesion. What the hell is happening here? Blackwood's authoritative voice carried boardroom confidence, despite underground location, corporate command presence, rather than tactical leadership. My security team detected energy surge consistent with activation protocols. He focused on Rebecca with recognition overriding surprise. Dr. Chen, I should have known you'd be involved when our equipment started malfunctioning. The chamber's acoustic properties carried his voice with perfect clarity while simultaneously broadcasting Ethan's interaction with the crystalline interface. The boy's fingers continuing activation sequence despite interruption. Holographic display expanding to show deeper connection patterns beneath the mountain range. Jackson assessed security personnel with military precision, former military carrying non-lethal control equipment rather than conventional weapons, professional stance indicating training without immediate hostile intent. Tactical threat assessment, moderate but containable through proper response management. Mr. Blackwood. Jackson maintained neutral tone while establishing authoritative presence. Your persistence is understandable given what your father and grandfather invested in pursuing this technology. But I believe you have misunderstood what Walter Miller actually discovered. This isn't something that can be extracted and commercialized through conventional means. Blackwood advanced with corporate confidence undeterred by mysterious surroundings, attention divided between active holographic display and unexpected occupants. My father spent 40 years tracking energy anomalies throughout this mountain range after Walter stole their joint research. Our company has invested millions in developing technology to access what your grandfather selfishly kept to himself. His voice carried entitlement born from generational pursuit. Whatever activation sequence the boy is implementing won't change the mineral rights we've secured throughout this region. The holographic display expanded with Ethan's continued interaction, revealing deeper connections extending far beyond local mountain range, energy pathways connecting to similar formations across continental boundaries, global network pulsing with rhythmic illumination, suggesting vast integrated system rather than isolated phenomenon. Rebecca maintained scientific documentation while addressing Blackwood's fundamental misunderstanding. Walter didn't steal anything, James. He prevented your father from weaponizing something that was never meant to be controlled by any single entity. This isn't conventional energy to be extracted and sold. It's an integrated planetary system that maintains environmental equilibrium through continuous feedback loops. Blackwood signaled his technical specialist forward, corporate acquisition mode overriding scientific caution. Whatever philosophical position Walter maintained, the practical applications are clear. Our research indicates extraction potential equivalent to replacing the entire fossil fuel infrastructure with zero-emission alternatives. The market implications alone justify whatever development investment required. As the specialist attempted to access secondary crystalline formations with portable equipment, the chamber's response was immediate and dramatic. Harmonic resonance shifting to disruptive frequency that rendered electronic equipment non-functional. Holographic display intensifying to brilliant illumination that temporarily affected human visual acuity, gravitational parameters fluctuating to create momentary disorientation among all present. Ethan remained connected to central interface, unaffected by environmental disruption. The mountain is showing you why extraction won't work. His child's voice carried unexpected authority through perfect acoustic transmission. It's been trying to explain for a long time, but people weren't listening the right way. The holographic display shifted to historical progression, mining operations throughout the region, environmental damage from extraction activities, connectivity, disruption in energy pathways corresponding with industrial development. The presentation continued to more recent activities. Blackwood's research stations positioned at key intersection points, measurement equipment, interrupting natural flow patterns, extraction technology, creating destabilizing resonance throughout the network. Finally, projection displayed potential outcome scenarios, complete extraction causing catastrophic system collapse, regional seismic events triggering cascading infrastructure failure, even atmospheric disruption from released energy normally contained within stabilizing network. The simulation concluded with comparison visualization, destructive extraction versus harmonic integration modeled on Walter's technology that supported rather than depleted natural systems. Blackwood watched with corporate skepticism, gradually transitioning to scientific concern, professional assessment overriding profit motivation as evidence accumulated. His technical specialist attempted equipment restart without success, confirming environmental override of conventional technology. That's a very impressive display, but computer simulations can be programmed to show any outcome desired. Blackwood maintained negotiating position despite evident uncertainty. My research team has developed extraction methods specifically designed to minimize system disruption while maximizing energy capture efficiency. Before Jackson could respond, movement from secondary passage entrance interrupted the confrontation. A solitary figure advancing with confident familiarity suggesting previous knowledge of the chamber's existence. The man's expensive wilderness gear contrasted with Blackwood's corporate attire while maintaining similar authority presence. Older version of James Jr., with weathered features showing decades of determined pursuit. Blake Blackwood. Margaret's intelligence assessment proved accurate. The real power behind Blackwood Resources had finally emerged from executive isolation to personally oversee critical acquisition. The patriarch's presence indicated situation significance beyond standard corporate operation. The elder Blackwood surveyed the chamber with recognition rather than discovery, gaze settling on crystalline interface with proprietary intensity that confirmed decades of obsessive pursuit. So Walter's sanctuary is finally revealed. His voice carried complex emotion beneath corporate control, bitterness, admiration, even nostalgic connection to former research partner. James Jr. responded with evident surprise at his father's appearance. "Dad, you shouldn't be down here. The medical team advised against any strenuous activity since your procedure." Blake dismissed concern with impatient gesture, attention focused entirely on active interface and its child operator. Walter always said the sensitivity would manifest in his bloodline eventually. He theorized genetic predisposition for neural synchronization with the resonance field. His assessment shifted to Jackson with evaluating precision. "You must be Jackson Miller. Walter spoke of you occasionally during our early correspondence, before our professional disagreement changed the relationship dynamics." The chamber's acoustic properties carried subtle harmonic shift as Blake approached the central platform. Environmental response suggesting recognition patterns extended to negative associations. Ethan maintained interface connection with unwavering focus. Holographic display, continuing operational sequence despite additional audience. Jackson assessed the elder Blackwood with military precision, calculating movement patterns indicating physical rehabilitation following medical procedure, subtle breathing control suggesting supplemental oxygen dependence masked by practice compensation techniques, pharmaceutical management evidence through pupillary response characteristics. Intelligence assessment, terminal medical condition managed through aggressive intervention, motivation potentially altered by mortality awareness, Mr. Blackwood. Jackson acknowledged the patriarch while maintaining defensive positioning. "Your persistence speaks to the significance of what Walter discovered, but I believe fundamental misunderstanding has driven 3 generations of conflict that never needed to occur." Blake's expression showed corporate skepticism tempered by scientific curiosity. Businessmen and researchers still competing for priority despite decades in executive leadership. Walter was brilliant but impractical. He discovered potentially unlimited energy source, but refused to develop commercial applications that could benefit millions. His idealistic position cost humanity decades of advancement. Rebecca continued documentation while addressing the historical distortion. "Walter understood something you and your father missed entirely. The energy exists in balance with environmental systems. Extraction beyond certain parameters triggers automated defense mechanisms within the network itself. The mining accident wasn't industrial sabotage, as your company claimed. It was systemic response to forced extraction exceeding sustainable parameters." The holographic display shifted to historical footage, original research facility where Walter and James Sr. had made their discovery, early experiments showing promising results, gradually escalating disagreement over commercialization approach. The sequence continued through implementation attempts that triggered system rejection, culminating in catastrophic mine collapse that corporate records attributed to structural failure rather than energy system defense. Blake watched with complex expressions suggesting memory confirmation rather than new information, corporate narrative confronting scientific reality after decades of motivated reasoning. Walter always claimed the system was semi-sentient, environmental intelligence operating through distributed network rather than centralized consciousness. I considered it metaphorical framework for complex physical principles. Ethan's connection with interface intensified, holographic display, responding with enhanced resolution and expanded information density. The mountain remembers everyone who touches its heart. Grandpa understood how to listen instead of just taking. It showed him how to build harmony instead of extraction. The chamber's acoustic properties carried the boy's voice with perfect clarity while simultaneously modulating harmonic frequencies throughout the space. Crystalline formations resonating in synchronized patterns that created both audible and subsonic vibrations penetrating stone structure itself. The display transitioned to Walter's alternative technology, integration systems that supported energy network rather than depleting it, architectural designs that channeled natural flow rather than restricting it, even medical applications utilizing harmonic resonance for cellular regeneration without pharmaceutical dependence. Jackson recognized strategic opportunity in Blake's engaged attention, the patriarch's scientific curiosity temporarily overriding corporate acquisition programming. This was never about ownership, Mr. Blackwood. Walter wasn't hoarding discovery for himself. He was developing interface technology that worked with the system rather than against it. The house he built demonstrates sustainable implementation without environmental disruption. Blake approached the central platform with scientist fascination temporarily replacing executive calculation, decades of pursuit finally reaching discovery phase. The harmonic integration theories we discarded as impractical idealism during early research. Walter maintained they represented optimal approach despite limited commercial potential. What if he was right? Jackson advanced cooperative framework rather than adversarial positioning. Your company has resources Walter never possessed: implementation capability, distribution networks, political influence. His technology offers something equally valuable: sustainable energy interface without environmental backlash or resource depletion. The elder Blackwood's expression showed recalculation, corporate strategy assessment integrating new variables after decades of pursuing single extraction methodology. The market implications would require complete business model restructuring. Our current extraction technologies represent billions in research investment. Ethan disengaged from interface for first time since activation, approaching Blake with child's directness, untainted by corporate negotiation protocols. The mountain can help fix you. His small hand extended toward the older man with innocent certainty. It showed me how the water made me better when I was sick. The energy can repair damaged cells if you connect the right way. Blake's practiced corporate mask faltered momentarily. Mortality, vulnerability, breaking through executive composure. Medical records were supposed to remain confidential. How could you possibly know about my condition? The chamber's acoustic properties carried subtle shift as Ethan guided Blake towards central interface. Holographic display reconfiguring to show cellular-level interactions between resonance energy and biological systems. The mountain remembers everyone. It can feel the damaged parts inside you, just like it felt the sickness inside me. Rebecca maintained scientific documentation while providing technical context. Walter's later research focused on medical applications, using specific harmonic frequencies to stimulate natural healing processes without pharmaceutical intervention. His journals documented remarkable success with certain degenerative conditions, though he never published findings through conventional channels. Blake hesitated before a crystalline interface. Corporate calculation visibly wrestling with desperate personal motivation. Terminal prognosis creating decision parameters outside normal business framework. My specialists have exhausted all conventional treatment options. Experimental procedures have provided minimal extension with declining quality metrics. The choice is yours, Mr. Blackwood. Jackson recognized pivotal decision point where adversary potentially becomes ally through shared interest rather than continued opposition. Walter believed proper integration with the energy system could achieve what conventional medicine considers impossible. Whether that's true remains unverified, but your current approach guarantees continued conflict without beneficial outcome for any party. The chamber seemed to hold collective breath as Blake placed hesitant hand against crystalline surface, corporate skepticism yielding to personal desperation after exhausting conventional alternatives. The interface response was immediate and dramatic, energy flowing through contact point, amber illumination extending through Blake's arm into central body mass, holographic display showing cellular-level interaction between resonance field and damaged biological structures. Blake gasped with evident discomfort that gradually transitioned to amazement as interface connection stabilized, energy flow adjusting to optimal parameters for biological integration. The display tracked real-time changes at molecular level, cellular repair mechanisms activating at accelerated rate, damaged structures regenerating through guided energy application, even genetic expression modifying to support healing processes. When connection finally disengaged after several minutes, Blake stepped back with visible transformation. Breathing pattern normalized, physical stance strengthened, even skin tone showing improved circulation characteristics. Scientific wonder replaced corporate calculation in his expression as he processed direct experience overriding decades of skeptical dismissal. Walter was right. Blake's voice carried genuine realization rather than strategic positioning. The system doesn't respond to forced extraction. It rejects invasive methodology while supporting integrative approach. His gaze shifted between chamber components, with researchers' appreciation replacing executive acquisition assessment. We've been approaching this entirely wrong for 3 generations. The holographic display, reconfigured to show alternative implementation model, Blackwood's existing infrastructure repurposed for integrative technology, distribution networks channeling sustainable energy without environmental disruption, even medical facilities utilizing resonance therapy for conditions conventional medicine considered untreatable. James Jr. watched his father's transformation with evident confusion. Corporate succession planning, confronting unexpected paradigm shift. Dad, what about our extraction technology? The board has committed billions to development pipeline based on conventional methodology. Blake turned toward his son with mentor's patience replacing executive direction. James, we've been pursuing the wrong approach since your grandfather first discovered these energy pathways. Walter wasn't our competition. He was trying to prevent us from destroying something irreplaceable through misguided exploitation. His gaze returned to the holographic display with scientists' appreciation. This isn't something we can own and sell through conventional business models. It requires fundamentally different relationship with the resource itself. The chamber's acoustic properties carried subtle harmonic shift, suggesting environmental approval of this philosophical realignment. Crystalline formations throughout the space pulsing with synchronized illumination that created cathedral-like atmosphere, enhancing transformative moment. 2 years later, Walter Miller's Stonehouse had transformed from isolated sanctuary to research headquarters for the newly established Resonance Foundation. Collaborative enterprise combining Blackwood resources with Walter's technology under neutral governance structure, ensuring sustainable implementation without corporate exploitation. The property expansion maintained architectural integration with natural surroundings, additional structures built using Walter's resonance principles, energy systems functioning in harmony with mountain pathways rather than disrupting natural flow patterns. Solar panels and conventional renewable technologies complemented resonance capture, creating hybrid system that demonstrated practical implementation without dependency on geological anomalies. Jackson oversaw technical operations with military precision applied to civilian infrastructure. Former Ranger skills repurposed for protection through integration rather than confrontation. His engineering background provided practical framework for implementing Walter's theoretical designs, translating visionary concepts into functional applications. The main laboratory occupied expanded space beneath original structure. Scientific equipment arranged around central interface connected directly to root core through amber pathways Walter had established decades earlier. Rebecca directed research team comprising specialists from diverse disciplines, physicists, geologists, medical researchers, even anthropologists studying historical evidence of previous civilizations' interaction with energy network. Blake Blackwood maintained advisory role rather than operational control, corporate expertise contributing to implementation strategy without dictating research direction. His recovery had progressed beyond conventional medical explanation, terminal diagnosis replaced by ongoing regeneration that medical team monitored with scientific objectivity despite seemingly miraculous results. Blackwood resources had undergone parallel transformation. Extraction technologies repurposed for integration applications, corporate structure reorganized around sustainable implementation rather than resource depletion, even leadership philosophy shifting from dominance to partnership with natural systems. James Jr. managed transition with surprising adaptability, business acumen finding expression through innovative implementation rather than exploitation. The root core chamber itself remained primary research site, ancient technology providing inspiration for modern applications while maintaining its mysterious origins. Archaeological teams documented evidence suggesting prehistoric civilization had established original interface, mathematical patterns indicating sophisticated understanding predating recorded history. Ethan divided time between conventional education and specialized training, developing his unique sensitivity to resonance fields. Academic curriculum balanced with intuitive connection that defied scientific classification, yet provided invaluable insights. The boy's abilities had expanded rather than diminished with maturity, connection deepening through structured practice, while maintaining childlike wonder at discoveries that continued revealing themselves through enhanced perception. Margaret Cooper still occupied her ridgetop cabin, refusing more comfortable accommodations despite Blake's repeated offers. The older woman maintained independent monitoring network, experience-honed vigilance, providing security layer beyond technological systems. Her relationship with Blake had evolved from adversarial to cautiously respectful, decades of opposition gradually yielding to collaborative purpose. On crisp autumn evening, with sunset painting mountains in familiar copper and gold, Jackson and Ethan sat on porch of original stone house, watching amber illumination emerge from pathways beneath their feet as daylight faded. The resonance network had expanded beyond initial discovery, reconnecting sections disrupted by industrial activity throughout the range, healing processes extending through natural systems in widening circle of restoration. Sometimes strength isn't about what you can take, but what you're willing to protect. Jackson's military perspective had transformed through experiences beyond tactical doctrine, former ranger finding purpose in preservation rather than confrontation. Your grandfather understood that before anyone else. Ethan nodded with wisdom beyond 13 years, adolescent frame beginning to show young man emerging from child who had first connected with mountain's heart. The mountain says we're still just beginning to understand what it's been trying to tell us. There are other places like this all over the world, waiting for people to remember how to listen instead of just taking. The house hummed around them with familiar harmonic resonance, amber pathways pulsing in rhythm that had become background music to their daily existence, energy flowing through stone structure with living presence that defied conventional classification yet provided undeniable evidence of intelligent design beyond human creation. That night, as darkness settled across the valley, the mountain glowed with subtle illumination visible only to those who knew what to look for. Energy pathways connecting throughout ancient range, resonance network continuing cycles established millions of years before human habitation. The Blackwood monitoring stations now served as integration nodes rather than extraction points, corporate resources repurposed for protection rather than exploitation. Sometimes legacy isn't what you build, but what you choose to preserve. Jackson watched the illumination patterns from bedroom window, ranger vigilance, maintaining security awareness, even amid peaceful coexistence. Walter's vision had finally manifested through unlikely alliance between corporate power and environmental wisdom, proving that sometimes the most valuable discoveries aren't new resources to exploit, but better ways to live in harmony with what already exists. The mountain continued its ancient rhythms beneath them, energy flowing through pathways older than human civilization, resonance patterns maintaining balance through continuous adaptation rather than rigid control. Whatever intelligence guided these systems operated on timescale beyond human comprehension, patient enough to wait generations for proper understanding to emerge from misguided exploitation. In the room that had once been Walter's study, now transformed into Research Coordination Center, Blake Blackwood reviewed implementation reports with scientist precision rather than executive impatience. His recovery had stabilized at biological age, approximately 20 years younger than chronological measurement, medical team documenting cellular regeneration patterns that defied conventional understanding, yet provided empirical evidence of resonance therapy effectiveness. Sometimes the greatest discoveries come when we stop trying to conquer nature and learn how to listen instead. Blake's perspective had transformed through direct experience, overriding decades of corporate conditioning, terminal diagnosis creating openness to alternative paradigms that success had previously prevented. Walter understood that before any of us were ready to hear it. Outside, autumn wind carried leaves in spiraling dance across clearing where Walter's house stood as testament to harmonious integration. Stone structure, drawing energy from mountain's heart, while providing interface between human ingenuity and natural systems. The resonance network pulsed beneath them in rhythmic cycles that had continued uninterrupted for millions of years, patient enough to withstand human misunderstanding while waiting for partnership rather than exploitation. The mountain had called its chosen guardians home, as Walter had predicted decades earlier. Now that home extended protection to widening circle through unlikely alliance between corporate resources and environmental wisdom, proving that sometimes healing begins when we recognize that what we sought to control was actually inviting us to connect all along.